1.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the territorial song. Please remain standing for my brief prayer. We give thanks for life. We give thanks for this island that we call our home, which for me is a paradise, regardless of its many flaws. We have a duty to do what is necessary to ensure that our island develops and can be a paradise for Montserratians here and abroad, and for those who are also interested in seeing the island and its people develop to their full potential. That is my prayer for this evening. Please be seated. Distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, friends, it is always a pleasure to be able to welcome you to this event that had its origin in the 1970s when the late Sir Howard Fergus was in charge of the University of the West Indies Extramural Center in Montserrat. For several years, he delivered the public lecture at different venues around the island, but he gradually involved other graduates as guest presenters. This year's lecture will be the first one since Sir Howard passed last year, and I invite you to join me in a minute of silent reflection in his memory. I am particularly grateful to Mr. White, our guest presenter this evening, as well as others who were willing to accept the invitation to be this year's presenter. In fact, last year we had several persons who indicated that they wanted to be the presenters. However, as the time approached, one person ended up needing to have surgery. One never knows what the future holds. So we particularly welcome Mr. White accepting the invitation without hesitation. He has chosen as his topic. I did not persuade him to choose that topic. He chose the topic himself. However, it was interesting for me because last year we had a series of discussions, and one of the things that came out was that there were several individuals overseas who wanted to see electoral change in Montserrat. There are Montserratians overseas who feel cheated of their right to be able to participate in elections. There was a document that spoke of people's wishes for electoral reform, but here we are in an election year, moving towards general elections later this year without having had that electoral reform that people asked for. So it's an issue which has raised its head over and over again. Those in the diaspora have said that there are criteria that they would like to propose to be able to participate in elections, to be able to vote. However, those of us who are here, there are those among us who are here who think that they shouldn't dictate what happens in Montserrat. So unfortunately, we're in a position where, unlike other people who are able to vote even though they're not in their country of birth, we are not denying our Montserratians that right. So as we remember March 17, 1768, we need to reflect on the experiences of our ancestors who endured chattel slavery for centuries. New research is throwing light on the impact of that experience of enslavement and colonialism on the psyche of our people today. This means that any discussion about the development of our people has to address the issue of the need for healing from the historical damage that was done. How do you get people to recognize it and to treat with it so that we can advance as a people? An effort also has to be made to examine the ways in which these damaging historical legacies continue to manifest themselves under the guise of new relationships, new institutions, new names, and development plans that ultimately change nothing. We have to make a concerted effort to ask questions, to be critical thinkers. we need to read, and we need to understand our history. Now, about Mr. White. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce you to him, to you. Mr. White served as Managing Director of Montserrat Utilities Limited, MUL, from 2007 to 2014, and he supervised the amalgamation of the former Montserrat Electricity Services Limited and the Montserrat Water Authority, creating what we now know today as Montserrat Utilities Limited. Prior to that, he worked in the Electricity Department in the Ministry of Communications and Works from 1972 to 1974 until the Montserrat Electricity Corporation, or MONLEC, was established. He then worked as Senior Electrical Inspector and Telecommunications Officer in the ministry. He has held various other positions in Montserrat, to include General Manager of Montserrat Land Development Authority from 1991 to 1997, and he was owner and manager of OJE Enterprises, a computer sales and service company in Montserrat from 1988 to 1997. If we go back a bit, from 1974 to 1987, he also did pioneering work in the education sector when he served as teacher, then principal at the Montserrat Secondary School, and eventually as education officer in the Ministry of Education. For example, during his tenure, extracurricular activities were widened at the Montserrat Secondary School, or MSS, to include a school band and an MSS masquerade troupe. He expanded on the tuck shop, which was originally introduced by former principal, Mr. Wilfred Hoppy. I was a student when Mr. Hoppy was principal, and I remember he taught English at one point and gave me 5 out of 20 for an essay that he asked me to read to the class. It was full of action. Students were rolling around laughing, and he said, this is not what he expects in an essay. And he was able to convince me to the extent that he would give 5 topics to prepare for us to choose one. I would write 3. I enjoyed his classes. He talked about how all subjects were integrated, and he just inspired a love for learning. I will always remember that. But Mr. White would have been a teacher at the school at the time, teaching maths. He didn't have to put up with me and my math skills. During his tenure, he also, extracurricular activities were widened at the MSS. I'm rereading something, I'm continuing now. Junior prefects were introduced in the lower school in keeping with the growing student body, and a student council was established. This was under Mr. White. He also introduced personal computers into the school, enabling students to later pursue careers as computer programmers and other related computer professionals. He also introduced an agricultural science program to the MSS, allowing students entering from the junior secondary school in Salem to be able to write a certificate exam at the 5th form level. He gave students the opportunity to write their CXC or other exams under the school's umbrella, even though they might have been suspended from school for violations in their senior year. Prior to that, students were not given that opportunity. He also negotiated with the ministry to provide students who were from the primary schools in the east of the island with an opportunity to enter MSS after completing 7th standard, but were unable to attend junior secondary school in Plymouth. Despite legislation that specified the enrollment of boys in the Cadet Corps, he was able to create an opportunity for girls to enroll as well. He facilitated the expansion of the Corps to include the students at the then junior secondary school in Salem as well. Mr. White holds a Bachelor's of Engineering, Electrical Engineering from City University in New York, and a postgraduate diploma in education from the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. He's a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer and has attended several training courses in geothermal energy, energy inventory assessment, microelectronics, project management and implementation. He is a member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, and he has served on various boards and committees in Montserrat, to include the Development Control Authority, the National Education Advisory Committee, the Development Marketing and Finance Corporation, the National Sports Council, and the Montserrat Amateur Basketball Association, and the Christmas Festival. He was also an executive member of the Montserrat Allied Workers Union, the Montserrat Union of Teachers, and the Montserrat Christmas Festival Committee. His regional and extra-regional service includes his tenure as a member of the Caribbean Examination Council, floor member, as well as treasurer of the Aspirers Club in Boston, and from 1998 to 2007, a self-employed computer consultant in Boston. He also served in the 1st Air Cavalry Division in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam conflict from 1970 to 1972. As a concerned member of the Montserrat community, Mr. White started a discussion forum just last year to address issues that affect our island's development. He has been married and is the father of 5 children. Please warmly welcome our presenter for this evening, Mr. Peter White.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was a bit hesitant because after listening to all that was being said, it sort of signaled how advanced I am in age, because obviously, to have done all that stuff that she's been, that she related, made it, you know, I don't know if I should be worried. And I believe that perhaps, just perhaps, the time spent doing all of these things have enabled me to have a different perspective on a lot of things that happens here in Montserrat. And the topic unity in diversity, charting a sustainable future for Montserrat, sounds a bit contradictory in some senses to some people, unity in diversity. But I think it's how you interpret the words unity and diversity. And one of the things I want to do in my presentation is essentially to give you my interpretation, and hopefully you will be convinced in some form or fashion that what I had to say makes a little bit of sense. Let me start by saying, there's a term, Kia Orana. May you have a long life and fulfilling life. That's neither Irish, Montserratian, or African. It's a saying that possibly only one person in this room at this point in time understood from the beginning. That's Dr. Ryan. Dr. Ryan spent some time in the South Pacific Islands, in New Zealand specifically. And you can't get more diverse than that, can we? We gather to commemorate St. Patrick's Day, a day deeply woven in the fabric of Montserratian identity. Let us acknowledge the rich tapestry of that heritage. We stand here, descendants of both Irish, West African ancestors, the stories etched in our land, our culture, and our very souls shaping the spirit of this land. While St. Patrick's Day holds a unique place in our national calendar as a holiday, it serves as a springboard for a deeper conversation, one that confronts the complexities of our past and chart a path forward for our sustainable future. I wish to say at this point that the diversity which we inherit is interesting because people seem to feel that diversity means difference, and that difference cannot involve unity. We can't ignore the shadow cast by the 1768 revolt. This was a revolt by our African ancestors against the enslavement in Montserrat by the English owners of Montserrat. The white Irish supervisors played a role in the suspension of the rebellion, suppression of the rebellion. It's crucial to remember that both the enslaved Africans and the Irish indentured servants faced oppression under British rule. It wasn't just simply Irish and were Africans. It was Irish, Africans, and the English. The English owned Montserrat. They were the owners of the estates for the most part. And therefore, the Irish served as their servants, their agents. And although it is felt that the Irish were extremely cruel, more so than most, I'm told, we must recognize the fact that they were under the gun themselves. It's an uncomfortable truth, but we need to embrace the shared narrative and the resilience of both our ancestors' groups. There is a shared struggle, and the key to that shared struggle is the divide and rule philosophy, the legacy that continues to linger until today. The Irish supervisors, the enslaved Africans. This presents a sort of cultural dichotomy, and we are still in that sort of frame of mind today. The commemoration of Irish heritage, alongside the undeniable African influence on our culture, presents an interesting paradox. While both traditions deserve recognition, the emphasis on St. Patrick's Day can inadvertently overshadow the dominant African cultural elements. And I repeat, the dominant African cultural elements. This creates a false dichotomy, one that we must move beyond. Let us celebrate the beauty of the intertwined heritage, acknowledging both the Irish roots and the vibrant African soul that defines Montserrat. Those who may not be aware, and I doubt very much the folks in this room are not aware. Virtually everyone on this island can check their DNA and discover that we have both Irish and West African in our blood. The fact that that is in fact the case means that we can't ignore one or the other. As we celebrate Irish heritage, the vibrant African influences remain undeniable. This dichotomy, a product of historical manipulation, can no longer hinder our progress. We must move beyond superficial labels and embrace the essence of Montserrat, a blend of cultures, a harmonious unity in diversity. We tend to ignore the very nature of our own being. Why? Because we've been taught to do it. It's not accident. It's not accident that the Irish were pitted against the local Africans. It's deliberate. If you gave the Irish, who are themselves indentured servants or descendants of indentured servants, the opportunity to do as they would wish, to celebrate their own culture with little hindrance. You gave them the impression that, yes, this is their opportunity to live a life that others have imposed. But those same Irish people are now part of our being. They're not separate from us. Following the diaspora who, for one reason or another, had to leave this island, we find ourselves in a situation where they feel that separation. They feel that lack of unity. They feel the diversity. That is, the difference that between us and them. Following the eruption of the volcano, we find ourselves in a situation where not only had people leave the island for various economic problems that existed, and I'm sure you all know about the business of going to the UK to help UK rebuild after the war, things like that. We're not necessarily talking about those. But what we are talking about are those who were forced to leave post-volcano, where, don't know what the figures say, but it's more than 2/3 of the population of this island had to depart. Why? They couldn't live here anymore because 2/3 of the island itself was uninhabitable. And not only that, but that space was where the 2/3 of our population lived. We were left with the 1/3 that was never, ever developed. We are left with the legacy of having to build on nothing. We find that this disruption from the volcano had immense hardship on our people and our economy. Amidst all those challenges, the people who emigrated, our diaspora, I believe have emerged as a source of strength. They're able to live here with nothing and was able to build through their resilience, through contributions that we here unfortunately fail to recognize at times. And they offer the opportunity for us to recover, because their interest has not waned. I think those of us who live here marvel at times about the people who come here during the St. Patrick's week. Where did they come from? Where were they? All these years. They came from wherever because they have not actually left us. They come to see their family. They come to see their friends that they don't see in the diaspora, or the family they don't see in the diaspora. They'll see them here. They come to see what was left of what they knew Montserrat to be. They come, in a lot of instances, with thoughts of returning. They come, and hopefully some of them will return. It's from that, I believe, it's possible for us, with their assistance, to forge a sustainable future. But we must unite. We must forget the divide and rule philosophy, because that's what still engages us today. The people here are saying, and I don't hear it so often as I used to, but all you left us and go about all your business, and now all you're coming back and telling us how to run the place. I don't hear it that often anymore, but I still hear it. And the people who come say, I am belong. You can't stop me. But once they're here for a bit, they say, what may stop here for? People around here don't want us. And we got a good life where we be. I hear some say that. But I also hear some say, no matter how bad it is out there, or how good it is out there, or how bad it is here, or how good it is here, I am a navel string berry. And the problem we have is encouraging those people to understand that what they contribute to this island and to its development is to the benefit of all Montserratians, not just the ones who live here, nor the ones who come to visit, as I'm told that's all they want to do. So I'm saying today that unity is not just a slogan. It's the foundation for progress. We must realize our heritage is unique, and promoting cultural tourism that celebrates our shared history without exacerbating past divisions is the way to go. We must bridge the gaps that divide us, both on island and in the diaspora. We must build a truly prosperous and sustainable Montserrat. We need to showcase the beauty of our blend, attracting visitors who appreciate authenticity, not manufactured narratives that are convenient or commercially exploitable. Our cultural diversity is not a burden, but a treasure. We can leverage it to attract and celebrate authentically, fostering understanding and respect. This approach will ensure that economic development is inclusive and sustainable and benefiting to all Montserratians. The volcanic activity is not just a reminder of our vulnerabilities, but also a testament to our untapped geothermal resources. Transitioning to 100% renewable energy, harnessing the power of geothermal, solar, and wind is not just an environmental imperative, but an economic opportunity. It enables those of us who are not resident here to engage in the development of Montserrat in one form or another. Energy is the buzzword for the world these days. You can't read a newspaper. People don't read newspapers these days. You can't go on the internet without hearing about the billions and trillions of dollars that are being invested in energy and energy development for the people who run things. We in Montserrat, as demonstrated by the volcano, have a lot of energy. But we're not, I don't know if allowed is the right word, to harness that energy. We could actually dance with the big boys when it comes to the amount of energy that is manifested by that volcano that has put us in our position today. I have a saying which I think most of you will understand. The volcano gave us swivel sweet. What we need to do is make swank. And those of you who don't understand what swank is, our version of lemonade. The black folks who couldn't access anything else were able to get the swivel sweet. And those of you who don't know what swivel sweet is, it's a very sour citrus fruit. That's what we got. Let's use it. Let's develop it to our advantage. The volcano shows us that we have the potential to develop. But you see, we still have this divide and rule in our, I nearly said DNA, because we get pitted one against the other instead of being instead of us coalescing, uniting to develop what we have and go forward. We find many reasons why we can't do things together. But somehow we can't find the reasons why we can't do it united. At every level of our history, I told Grace initially that I don't know about any St. Patrick's Day lecture, because those of you who may know me from before would tell you that I don't celebrate the Irish, or I didn't. It was not in my DNA. I can't say that because I have Irish in my DNA. But I did not believe that we should be even talking about St. Patrick's, other than the fact that there was a revolt. But we were revolting against who? We were revolting against a system which persists today. We are being told here, there, and everywhere that, he is not part of us, or she is not one of us, so we must not find any common ground. Grace mentioned the business of, in her opening remarks, about what people were saying with respect to development, the system, our government, it's interesting in that in our 2010 Constitution order, that's the document that we are presumably governed by. The word opposition occurs 19 times in one form or another, in context or another context. Opposition. Leader of the opposition. The opposition. The opposition. What does opposition mean? Definitely doesn't speak to unity. It speaks to division. And that's what we have as a document that rules us. For a lark, I decided I should try and find how many times the word unity can be found in that document. A search brought me 9 results, 9. But it was not 9 unity, the word unity on its own. It was unity as part of the word community. Part of the word community. And it was only mentioned 9 times. But opposition was mentioned 19 times. What does that say? Well, what it said to me was, I may not be making the points I want to make, but it said to me, in terms of what I believe is necessary at this point in time, is that we must develop our communities, and the unity, which is the only way, in my view, that we can move forward as a people, as a country, as a community, whether we actually live on island or we live in the diaspora. These days, I'm not so sure there's much difference. I was telling a friend today that another friend is visiting Ireland, and then I said to her, is he here because of St. Patrick's, or is he here as a result of the need to go to a family funeral? Of course, the person couldn't answer that question. But my point was, I only heard about the family funeral, I shouldn't say funeral, the death in the family. I only heard about it through a text from New York. The folks in New York knew about it before I did. They're the ones who told me. I live here. What does that tell us? It tells us if we really want to be a community. It's not very difficult to do whether we reside here or we reside there. It is up to us to make sure that that is implemented. I mentioned the energy, and I said it's an economic opportunity. It will create jobs, reduce reliance on fossil fuels, and position Montserrat as leader in sustainable development. Now, that sounds nice, But somebody will say, well, how are you going to do it? Raise the money. How do you find the funds to do what is necessary? And the problem we have, of course, is that over the years, people who control the purse don't seem to feel that development or things that will create development, a sustainable development, are as important as, say, turtle watching or the endemic species of frog that we have. Money is readily available for such things. I'm not saying that I'm against that, but I don't see the funds coming in a developmental way. We lost all the infrastructure that an island needs to survive. No seaport, no airport. We got back an airstrip, which is plaguing us today. And we are told that we will soon have a pier. I don't know how much that will plague us going down the line. But after 30 years, are you telling me that the Britain that ruled the waves does not know that an island, in order to be developed, an island that needs some sort of growth, can't do it if we don't have access, if we don't have the ability to go out and to come in. And it's now 29 years later, we are getting a facility that will allow us to move readily from the outside world to now. Why is it taking so long? For, like I said, the people who boast about ruling the waves should know that we needed at least a pier. But after 30 years, we need a port, much more than a pier. But I'll say that one of the things that we can do is that we can move toward developing our own infrastructure in some form or fashion. And one of the things that I think is important is that we can somehow find a means to do some of it ourselves. I have a little thing there on screen. It is a hydrofoil. It's a ferry that can travel from Montserrat to Antigua in an hour. It is 100% electric. If we had one of those, 100% electric, and if we had our geothermal resources in place, that would be using our local energy. We would not be importing diesel fuel in order to move from here to there. I need not say any more at this point than that. I think that I've spent enough time trying to say what I want to say. And I'll leave it for the rest of you to question what I've said, if not said. But in conclusion, I quote an Edward Bryce. I don't think anybody knows or even heard of the Edward Bryce. But Edward Bryce, I'm told, after doing a little bit of research, was a Protestant minister that was shipped out of England into Ireland. And I can't go into the details, but he said, "We are but one, though various we seem." And what I'm pointing out is that we may look different and we may even feel different, but we're one. Our diversity is not a weakness, but our strength. We're able to tap into all kinds of resources from here, there, and everywhere to make this little place someplace potential. By uniting under the banner of shared purpose, by acknowledging the complexities of our past, and embracing the potential of our unique heritage, we can chart a course towards a sustainable future for Montserrat. Let this St. Patrick's Day not be a celebration of Irish roots, but a reaffirmation of our collective identity, a call to action for unity, and a commitment to building a brighter tomorrow for all Montserratians. I close with another saying from the Maori. Kia haha, kia kaha. Stand firm.
Thank you, Mr. White. That was very engaging. I've made lots of notes, but I don't know if the moderator will allow me to start the ball rolling. We have Ms. Vanessa Bass here with us this evening to sort of provide the interface with the online forum and the physical forum. So she will be moving around with the microphone. If you have an intervention to make, just indicate by a show of hand, and she will get to you. Now, there are a couple of things that Mr. White mentioned. He said, we're talking about the Montserratians who left more recently, after the volcanic crisis started. But I think we need to talk about the ones who left with the Windrush group, because they were the ones who sustained our economy through remittances. And though we're still experiencing remittances, but the outflows are greater, not because of Montserratians, but because of the population, the diverse population, and the fact that people from the rest of CARICOM came here to work, and they are trying to look after their relatives overseas. But the thing I wanted to share with you, to cement this experience, growing up as a child, we knew about people who used to get the barrel. We were not one of those people. But since the volcanic crisis, I started to experience getting a barrel. and these are relatives who went to the UK and, you know, well-meaning, decided that they would put things together in a barrel and send to us. And I'm really pleased that the government has embraced this whole thing of a Christmas barrel and providing concessions on this barrel. Because I'm going to tell you, the duties at the port are high. One year, I actually laughed when I heard that, because I'm not pleased about Brexit. I'm not going to joke about it. I'm not pleased about it. So when I heard that the French told the British, let them find another route for their cargo, I was laughing. Didn't realize my barrel was there. So my barrel came for Valentine's and I had to pay. I didn't get the concession. But we have to think, we have to be critical thinkers. Because somebody makes a decision without discussing it with you, and it has an impact on you. You said, you spoke about forget, divide, and rule philosophy. We can't just forget it like that. It needs a lot of work because it is something that has been ingrained in us to the extent that we're not even aware that we're doing it. We object to things without even asking ourselves, why am I objecting? Somebody comes with an idea, and instead of thinking, okay, let's see how we can help to get this thing implemented, we're coming up with a number of, oh, you can't do it, and you can't do this, and you can't do that, and I'm like, okay, you have to be really strong to stick to what it is you started out to do. And I keep telling people, surround yourself with positive people. If you have naysayers always telling you what you can't do, what you can't accomplish, they are not your friends. I have other things to say, but I want to get to the hydrofoil. Because some years ago, there was a hydrofoil moving between St. Kitts and St. Martin. I don't think it took as long as an hour. It was shorter. But there was some suggestion that the waters in our region are filthy and cause damage. So I don't know if you want to revisit.
Yeah? Well, I think we can address that. You want me to,
I'm not terribly good with these things. Vanessa, please. Oh, you have a roving one. Okay. Or do you want to stand here?
I think you have
Stay here?
another question or two.
Okay, you speak.
This ferry is being developed, or has been developed, in Northern Ireland, in Belfast to be exact. And it serves, right now, another version of it, serves to carry passengers and freight to the North Sea wind turbines. And if anybody has any concept of what the North Sea is like, they can understand that hellhole doesn't really mean hell yet.
Yellow hole.
Yellow hole. But the point is that it is designed for operation in that type of environment, right? But who wants to ride in that type of environment anyway? We don't have that kind of seas. But it is designed, in case somebody is wondering, to actually function with 4 meters of wave, 4-meter waves. That's what, 12 feet or something in that neighborhood. Who wants to go to sea with 12-foot waves? Nobody. And I believe our meteorologists can tell us long before something like that occurs that this would not be traveling, right? This vessel is designed to ride above the water. And those who normally get seasick and things like that won't go, it won't stop people who have motion sickness, because some people got motion sickness just driving a vehicle, right? But for those who get sick at sea, the likelihood of getting sick on one of these is unlikely. It's also designed to turn over and right itself, in case you're wondering.
No, I love the idea of the hydrofoil. I've always mentioned it, but people kept reminding me about the problems that were experienced earlier. Because the ferry that we have, I'm happy for it, but the other day they planned a trip to St. Martin, And when I check the time, 5 hours on the water to go and 5 hours back, that's too much of my life. There's a gentleman with his hand.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Just one or two comments, if you don't mind, and a question or two as well. By the way, the hydrofoil certificate was a smashing success. It was always loaded to capacity during its short-lived stint running between St. Kitts and St. Martin. Of course, it was not necessarily or exclusively the result of the movement of the waves on the ship, but there were also questions with respect to maladministration, sometimes bordering on corruption. And so all those factors combined converged to sound definitely for the hydrofoil. The question of dividing rule, ladies and gentlemen, sir, I used to think that it was confined only to the realm of politics. In other words, the political directorate who benefited from the exercise of dividing rule. But from hearing both you and the lady here, seem to suggest that this phenomenon of dividing rule extends beyond the realm, the domain of politics, and saturates the society at large. Now, I have been in education all my life, and to tell you the truth, I have not seen it manifest in that particular field, the question of dividing rule. It seems to me that dividing rule finds its success where people believe that might is right. And because in our political system here, where there's so much power given to governments in general and to the leader of government in particular, well, certainly in independent countries like mine, they believe that in order to perpetuate their rule, they must divide the populace and rule. But like I said, I'm a bit intrigued by your suggestion, by your intimating that divide and rule extends beyond mere politics. I have been here for a couple of months, and to tell you the truth, I have never heard of St. Patrick. It's only now that this term here is running, I'm hearing so much about St. Patrick. I'd like to know, sir, at the end, who is St. Patrick really? What's his claim to fame? Why is he such a big thing in Montserrat? Now, you speak about, and this is my final comment for the time being. You speak about Montserrat should be exercising unity in diversity. But I'm asking you, I'm not necessarily paraphrasing St. Vincent's Prime Minister, who astutely, in my mind, observed that there is no model for a country of 4,500 people. So my question to you is, what is the best practice for a 4,500 population society in order for it to achieve that level of development and growth that we would like to see Montserrat achieve in short or long term? Thank you very much.
I think I need to deal with that one. Yeah. There is no model, as you say, that you can point to that is necessarily successful. But there are models where not necessarily the same as us, but have achieved some level of development that we don't, because they have resources to their disposal. The one that immediately comes to mind is the Falkland Islands. They have resources given to them, if you wish, by the fact that they control a large marine resource, and they have an income. And because they have an income, they do not need to depend on the UK for grants in aid in order to function. So in that sense, that's a matter. But the fact is, if we are united, if we are a community that includes our diaspora, then our numbers are no longer 4,000. Right? And in fact, one of the things that we ought to be doing, which is seem to escape most of the political directorate, is that the things that need to be done here in order for the members of the diaspora who wish to return and up that number are not being done. Just today, someone was asking about housing. You can't house more than 4,500 or 5,000 people if they're no place for them to live. Right? One of the things that should have been addressed early was the problem of housing. And as Grace mentioned, I was manager of the Land Development Authority at one point. And one of the focus of my attention was to get people who had no land, no property, some form of ownership of land, with the expectation that they would build. And it was going swimmingly until the volcano decided that that should not be the case. But the point is, if there's no place for people to live, they have to go. And a lot of them who have gone would wish to come back. But yet still, after 29 years, we don't have enough for the 4,500 to live. How do we progress? And one of the things that I know for a fact is that many people in the diaspora would like to build. But because of how the system is set up, they can't even find property to build on. And they've earned funds and are able to build. It's things like that. And one of the problems there is that our benefactors are dealing with, and I'm tempted to use the term superficial, but it's not superficial. They're looking at biodiversity and other things, fine. But that does not speak to people. It speaks to the frog, the oriole, the green turtle. It doesn't speak to the people. The things that should speak to people are being put aside. I wish I could say a little bit more, but at this point in time, I think I'm getting a little bit emotional.
So, I thought it was interesting that you said also, and who is this St. Patrick, right? And one of the things that I love about Montserrat is the community, the mixed community that's here. I come from a mixed background myself, of people that were good people. It wasn't something that was negative. There were, obviously, we know from slavery and things like this, that negative things happened between different groups. But who was St. Patrick? So they say that the story is that he was either some pope or bishop of the Catholic Church, and he went to Ireland, and he drove the snakes out of Ireland. The snakes, that's what they say. He drove the snakes out of Ireland. But when you do your research, you find out that it was really about when the Catholic Church, during the Crusades and things like that, went in and started killing off the Druids and the people, the native people that were in Ireland, and killed off a lot of the people that knew about the land and had their culture there. And they were some of the first people that those people of Europe enslaved, even before they started enslaving the Africans. And when you do your research beyond that, you find out that one of the reasons why they may have done that is because the Druids had relationships with Africans. They knew about each other. They traded with each other. They were friends. There was a community there. I'm from New York, and I took, my grandmother's not with me anymore, but I had taken her to the hospital one day, and some man there, when she went in, and he said, "Oh, she's so beautiful. Where are you guys from?" And I said, "Oh, well, her family's from a place, Montserrat." He said, "Oh my God, I'm Irish." He said, "Don't listen to these American Irish here that are very racist." He said, "If you go back to Ireland, they actually have respect for people of color. There's a different type of relationship because they too had to go through being enslaved. And even how did they come to this island? It's because they were enslaved by the British, put into the British Navy, and when they would have scurvy or whatever, they'd come here. The limes were here, but when they got here, they loved the people that were here. Yes, they did things. We know that what happened with them lynching at the tree, at the great tree, and things like that. So, but they had been, we deal with that today, of people that have lost the knowledge of their ancestors, and where you take their, what does slavery do? It takes away your history. It takes away your knowledge of self. The people in the, they weren't Druids walking around. They had been enslaved, brainwashed, even to this day with the Catholic Church. There's a problem in Ireland with pedophilia and weird things like that because they have been affected by slavery and by colonialism as well. So it's nice that here on this island, it's, even if they recognize it or not, it's kind of like them coming back together. We don't always feel that because there is sometimes things where it's it feels segregated in some places, but in other places, people go beyond that and they're friends and they come together. I mean, even the story of the leprechaun, you do some research, you find out they may have been the Twa Pygmies that came from Africa that had gold on them. We know now Africa's known for gold, and we also know now, finding out about frequencies and things like that, that there was certain ancient knowledge that our ancestors knew, that they've wiped from history. We don't even remember all of the technologies that we used to have. And we're trying to come back together now. We see the problems in the world right now. We see that colonialism has affected people of all colors, and we're trying to come together now. And Montserrat is an example of two groups that their ancestors were probably great friends. And somehow they've found themselves together here again. And maybe we haven't gotten the same camaraderie that we used to have, but as Peter was saying earlier, that is a goal we're trying to reach, to bridge the gap, because we need each other. The Africans that are here and the Irish that are here, we need to find that camaraderie that our ancestors had together in teaching each other about nature. We love nature. We love live and let live. We love being free people. In America, I find a lot of times as a Caribbean being, I get along with the Irish because they have the same type of energy and stuff that I have, whereas some other people, maybe from the South or something, are telling me that I need to calm down. But my Irish friends, they're like, hey, yes, let's, they're filled with spirit like I am. So, St. Patrick's, it's a shame that many Irish have become alcoholics and things like that because of what happened with St. Patrick. It's a shame. And same with people of color. Some have forgotten their majesty and may not be acting as in their, but Montserrat is different. It's a place where people come. You see the majesty of the black people that are here. and the Irish as well coming here, appreciating us. Not all, yes, we're still working on it. But let's get to that place where we are friends again, where we are family again, where we are allies again, so that we don't need to bring in people from outside necessarily who want to change the principles and spirit of Montserrat. There's something there.
Thank you. So guys, online.
Okay, so first, Mr. White. Yikes, sure. First, Mr. White, I'd like to thank you for speaking to us today. And I had a few questions about what you said. So firstly, it's really exciting to hear you speak about the prospect of geothermal energy being developed on the island. I was hoping you could speak a bit more about what stage the island's at with that. But also, I was wondering, what are your thoughts or what ideas do you have about how the island can make sure the profits from geothermal energy are redistributed? Yep, that's all for now. Thank you.
Good question. Number one, there's been any number of scientific studies done over the years. Dr. Ryan here is, shall we say, well, he's a volcanologist and he's an expert in the field and knows about the geothermal energy. He's head of the MVO, right? Now, the potential which people suggest we have ranges in, it goes into the, I think one quote was 800 megawatts plus. 800 megawatts plus of potential. Montserrat, now, as we stand, we only need 2.5. If we were to utilize just a very small fraction of what the geothermal energy has to offer for us, we would have income to do the things that we think we need to do and not told that we ought to do in order to develop our island. And it would allow people, our people, those who wish to return, because we would now have the economic willpower. They started to do drilling for geothermal, and the British bragged about the 15 million pounds, I think was the last figure I heard, that they've spent on developing our geothermal, or the two wells that were dug. There was supposed to be a third well, but that was cut off. But those two wells are enough to meet our needs and more, our local needs, as we speak. That alone would allow us to forget the importation of diesel for whatever. Our current electricity plant operates on diesel. We spend in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million a year on importation of diesel for the power station. That money could be invested in education, in healthcare, in all of the things that people in the diaspora think we need in order for them to return. If we don't have that money at our disposal, we can't do it. We can't go and borrow that money from elsewhere, because the British say that if we go out there to borrow, it's a contingent liability on them, and therefore, if anything needs to be done, they will have to do it. But they've only gone but so far. They say that we need an outside investor or somebody to come in to do the next step, which is the building of a plant, because that's all that's needed now. We've proven the resource, the wells are dug, and we just need to build a plant that will feed the grid. Now, think about it for a second. For at least, I'm not so sure what it's 5 or 6 years now, that third well has not been done. That's when they halted all activity on geothermal development, right? We could have had a plant put in place all that time. Now tell me, what outside investor will come into Montserrat, put their money into developing a plant for us, when that outside investor just need to look around and see all the opportunities out there to put that money into renewable energy, whether it be wind or solar or even geothermal, and get what is considered a decent return on their dollar, 15, 20%. We can't afford to do that. If you put the money in, where will that income for us as a 4,500 to 5,000 people be able to purchase electricity from that geothermal plant in order for them to get a return at that level? Maybe someone said the other day there was a yacht out there belonged to Bill Gates. That maybe Bill Gates will come in and build it for us. Now tell me, whatever that story was, it's only somebody like him who can push his hand in his pocket and throw away a couple of $100 million to be able to say, well, okay, here's $20 million US, build a plant. The British can easily, it's a rounding error for them in terms of their budget, if you want to call it a budget. They lost a couple of planes or whatever it is in Ukraine, that's where it is. That costs more than that, right? It's inexplicable to me why they do not see that it would make sense, put things in place, and let us live. Because that's basically all we're saying. Give us the opportunity to live. They want us to be continually dependent on them for whatever reason. And I don't want to go into speculation, but I could if you want me to. But I'll leave it at that. Right? In terms of where we are now, I'm told the government is saying that they have contact from 2 people who are willing to develop it. I don't know where that is at this point in time. I'm not privy to that kind of information.
I don't have any questions from online at the moment, but anybody else in house? Or maybe I'll throw in a question. So the focus of the lecture has been on integrating and working closely with the Irish. Personally, I see our Irish connection in modern day as more face value than anything else. But in my opinion, I feel as if the diaspora is now the new Irish. What is your take on that, especially as it relates to someone like myself who's returned and at almost every occasion have received resistance in some way? So as much as we invite people in the diaspora to return, sometimes we're not so welcoming. So how do we address that as an issue? So I think that the diaspora is the new Irish.
Well, I think that's one of the things which I believe is critical to our development. And that is, we are constantly being told that one way or another, and as you said, you've experienced it, having returned, that you experience difficulty because for one reason or another, someone or some people here resist your presence. Why, I'm not certain for a specific reason. But what I do know is that it is part of the culture that has developed, that's encouraged by this divide and rule issue. Our good friend from St. Kitts mentioned that he doesn't see that as part of the divide and rule concept. But it's something which is, those of us who have at least been on Ireland for quite a while would recognize, for instance, that the people in the north of the island were descendants, mainly descendants of the original Irish that came from St. Kitts and came here. Now they were sent from St. Kitts to Montserrat because the British did not want them in St. Kitts because they felt they were going to support the French, who had aligned themselves with the native population, the Amerindians, to fight against the British. And if the good thing to do was to move them from St. Kitts and bring them to Montserrat. Montserrat wasn't very valuable at that time. St. Kitts was, but not Montserrat. But because when they came here, there weren't any Africans. Then the Africans were brought in. Then what the British did was put the Irish that existed here in charge of the estates. Right? I gave them the power to do whatever. And they stayed in the UK or wherever and gave the orders. So we had that situation. So you had something developing on Ireland where there was a divide between the Irish and the local African descendants. That started back then. It continued into a situation where we have the British sending people from St. Kitts, St. Vincent, wherever, to come to say Montserrat to work in higher echelons, right? Local Montserratians couldn't rise to that level. If they found that they were capable, they will pick them up and send them to St. Kitts or to Antigua or somewhere else, right? So that there was not that connection between those who were doing their bidding and the people who they were in charge of, right? And that is that divide and rule, and that's translated into our today's culture, where our people weren't taught or didn't have access to what is considered entrepreneurial skills. All we were good for was to hook and catch fish and that sort of thing. The English people were the merchants. Those were the entrepreneurs, right? And if you're not an English person, you can't very well learn to be an entrepreneur, right? So it's built into the culture which was developed as a result of this divide and rule philosophy, right? There's an interesting thing that came to mind that I think I might as well mention. People talk about the Indian population locally. They come from a culture of entrepreneurs. That's how they survive. And they come here and they continue to do that. We never had that culture. And we say, well, how could these people come and do that? And yes, they're successful. Because we never learned that, right? We were never one of the merchants in town, right? We weren't even allowed to do that. Our scholars wanted to be doctors and lawyers. Why? Because when they became doctors and lawyers, they went elsewhere and thrived. We, on the other hand, found it difficult to do. And you say the diaspora coming back. The diaspora coming back with the same unfortunate problem in that a lot of them coming back expect a different type of reception. And again, that is encouraged because it divides us, right? Well, I'm not necessarily talking about white people against black people. I'm talking about groups, right, which are sort of inserted into the mix and kind of encouraged to be in opposition to one another. And that's why I don't like that word in this constitution. Opposition. Once you say opposition, it means that you will oppose, in a lot of instances, just for the sake of opposing. And the system says you should oppose, right? And we have, that's built into the system, into our culture, and so on. And so we have to work on that. We have to get rid of the documents that sin. Get rid of those. And we must understand one another and realize that we as a people, if we're united, then we can overcome a lot of that problem that exists with.
Good evening. I was listening to you, Vernier, and what you're saying is so true, but having spoken to many people here, we lost Fidel Castro some time ago, and I know a lot of people were so upset, oh, he's a communist, he's a communist. But one thing that he was trying to push was a United States of the Caribbean. And I remember speaking to someone here in Montserrat about that, and someone in the arts. And the gentleman told me, well, no, because I'm opposed to it. And I'm like, but why? You know, we could have a trading block. And his thing was, well, no, because here I'm a big fish in a little pond. And if we have a United States of the Caribbean, I'll be a little fish in a big pond. Not even trusting in his own talent and his own worth, because he was a brilliant artist. So it's a matter of changing the mentality. Because, of course, during times of enslavement, people were actually rewarded for going against one another. You were rewarded. We know what happened with the cottonwood tree. So one person destroyed a movement that was getting ready to happen. So we need to push the concept of a rising tide lifts all boats. This is what we must speak of. This is what we must have in our mentality. Because if you do well, I do well. And anyone else, if you do well, everyone can come along with you and rise with you. And we must push that mentality. Even have it as a slogan. A rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what we must strive for and get rid of opposition.
Seems as if we are at the point of wrapping up. Oh.
Good evening, everyone. I came to make sure that she was not speaking about getting rid of me. You know, Mr. White, can you hear me? Mr. White, I listened carefully. I was intrigued and enlightened by your presentation. But I had to make one or two comments. One is that we're actually sitting in a building that's been built by one of our greatest entrepreneurs. And I don't need to explain in detail. All around this compound is a testimony to that. As you look throughout Montserrat, try and imagine that while we may not have had a port built or a proper hospital built or fiber optic provided in 20 plus years, the poor and ordinary people of Montserrat have built homes, largely on their backs with very little help, trying just to get a roof over their head, never mind taking the other important steps needed to play a more significant part in the development of Montserrat. I also want to comment on the fact that probably our leaders in all sectors of our society need to begin to embrace our people who are called diaspora. At this very moment, we have hundreds of Montserratians descending on Montserrat. I was at one point called a calypso, I think was sung, about the diaspora premier, because I was being challenged or rebuked for spending too much time with the diaspora. But I'm happy that the people of Montserrat are realizing now that the two, did I say something wrong? That the 2 weeks that are most impactful on our economy are St. Patrick's, the 2 weeks of St. Patrick's. And I think people are beginning to appreciate our diaspora more. So I want to say on a positive note, my dear, my apologies for all of us, on behalf of all Montserratians, for all of us who may have treated the diaspora in the wrong way. And I am married to one such member of the diaspora. I have seen what happens. In opposition, over the past 4 years, the things that I've learned and seen, I hope will encourage me to do even more. It's very serious, but while we talk about the negatives, let us also remember that it's up to those of us who are speaking to really bring change. And the lady on my right has sacrificed, like many others, the time, important portion of her youth to be here on Montserrat to make a difference. And I really congratulate her and all of those who are coming while young people are leaving, hoping to empower themselves. So I hope that I may have said something that makes a difference. Thank you again, Mr. White.
ladies and gentlemen, I think we are at the end of our evening. It has been a very interesting discussion. And I actually wanted to add a bit to the issue of the divide and rule thing. We have had a history where our societies are stratified. The good thing about Montserrat is that there's one secondary school. But in other countries that experience colonialism as we have, you see, for example, when I went to Mona in Jamaica, I watched how certain students were treated based on the school they said they were coming from. And I think that happens in Barbados, that happens in Trinidad. And those people who find themselves at the top of the society, they lord it over the people below. In fact, you discover things like they help us in the worst possible way. In other words, they are aping the behavior of our masters from the past. So, I maintain once again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to change our damaged psyche, or else we're not going to be going anywhere. Now, I'm going to move on to the vote of thanks. I'd like to thank the Montserrat Arts Council for coordinating the delivery of this lecture. In particular, Jermaine, who is here with us this evening, because he said it has to be hybrid, because I was quite happy with the virtual presentation. But he said it has to be hybrid. And I'm really happy to see the faces here, and to see that you're interested in the discussion and you're participating in the discussion as well. I'd like to also thank Mr. Herman Sargent and Ray de Montserrat, who continue to assist with advertising, recording, and airing the lectures. That's an important role, and in fact, they maintain the archives as well. I would like to thank our librarian, Ms. Sonia Smith, who had the difficult task of rearranging here to accommodate the lecture this evening. And she also took on new responsibilities as technician. Sonia, thank you. And also convey our thanks to the rest of your staff as well. The decorations were done by Jessica Tao. I think she did a pretty good job. And Vernier, I don't think I can actually do anything without you having a hand. she has been helping us over the years with the online delivery. So I had to mention, could she assist again? And here you are, doing your usual wonderful delivery. Thank you. And Yvonne Lane from my office, she will be assisting me with the bush tea from plants from our garden at the site. We have lemongrass and we have mint, so we brought some for you to get some tea. And I think there's sweet potato pudding for you to get a taste while we celebrate our double heritage. Oh, actually, talking about double heritage, I remember as a child getting soda cakes. And I started researching it because I wanted to try to make it. Success wasn't too successful, but it apparently is an Irish dessert. So my plan for later this year is to explore by double heritage. I'm hoping to get to Ireland and I'm hoping to get to Ghana before I retire next year to see what I discover about cultural retentions from either place. So hopefully next year I'll have something interesting to share with you. Who am I missing in terms of thanks? Oh, the chairs from Look Up Primary School. Right, you will convey our thanks for them for providing the furniture. Oh, the gentleman, because I wanted you to introduce yourself, to tell us who you are, because I have never met you, sorry. Mr. Michael Esdale. Pleased to meet you and thanks for sharing. Yeah. that's very welcome participation. And you can tell that I'm growing old. My speaker. Mr. White, I think he did a tremendous job this evening. I think we had the benefit of your wealth of experience and the fact that you are interested in seeing change as well. So you were passionate is something that you felt from the heart, and that came across in your presentation. I'd like to thank you, and Mark would like to present you with a gift. I hope you're allowed to drink a bottle of wine. And you get a copy of the book written by Sir Howard about St. Patrick's. So, Mr. Estelle, I don't know if you want to purchase a copy from the Montserrat Arts Council so that you can share the information with your students. And you have a bag, a Montserrat Arts Council bag to secure your goods. Okay. So Yvonne has set up the light refreshments at the back there. You're invited to stay and stop, bush tea just before you get to bed, and try and get home safely. And to those who are listening online, thank you for listening in.